Okay, we'll start now. In this class, what we are going to do is we are going to discuss the 2025 exam paper, UPSC exam paper, philosophy optional, first paper, section B, which relates to Indian philosophy. In fact, I just want to tell to the new viewers, uh, last few classes, what I have done is I have discussed in detail the analysis of this year's 2025 exam philosophy paper. Also, I have discussed part A, section A of the paper one, that is Western philosophy, and tried to arrive at model answers. So today in that series, what we are going to do is we will discuss section B of part paper one, and we will try to find out what can be the model answers. As already, told in previous classes, this year's paper was little tough than previous year's papers. Though a few questions were direct questions, but most of the questions were indirect, comparative, critical, evaluative questions, which required application of mind in the exam. Now let us try to see the part section B of paper one. What were the questions and what can be the model answer for that? As you know, in the exam, there are two sections. Section A, Western philosophy in paper one. Questions 1 to 4 will be in section A. Section B, questions 5 to 8 will be in section B. And fifth question, as you know, we'll have 5 parts A, B, C, D, E, and 10 marks each, about 150 words you have to write. And subsequent questions will be, there will be 3 parts A, B, C, and you have to write in, the questions will be of 20 marks, 15 marks, 15 marks. So maybe 300 words, 225 words, 225 words each. Now, this is the first question, which is from Indian philosophy. Explain the ground on which Charvak rejects inference as a valid source of knowledge. Now, see, I keep on telling, always we should try to understand what is the directive of the question and what should be written in the answer. It's not that we write everything which we know about the topic, because then you are not going to get good marks. Your answer has to be very focused answer, directive based answer. Depending on what has been asked, you have to write. And it's not that what you know about the topic you should write. So here let us see. The question is, ground on which Charvak rejects inference as a valid source of knowledge. This is easy question, basically one of the easiest questions of this paper. Direct question also, because most of you who have studied Charvak, they will know how to answer this. So now let us try to understand. One more thing I just want to tell before I proceed. Important words, terms, or names, references have to be underlined in actual exam. Now, whatever needs to be underlined in my presentation, what I have done is I have made it bold. There may be a few leftover terms also which you can do depending on your choice. But then whatever important things you are writing needs to be underlined properly so that it gets the examiner attention immediately as and when he sees the question. So now let us try to see the answer. The Charvaks, the materialist school of Indian philosophy, admitted only perception as a valid pramana and rejected inference, that is Anuman. The rejections rest. So now you see, the question is ground on which Charvak rejects. So directly you have to come to the ground. What are the reasons why he rejects inference as valid source of Praman? You cannot describe everything about Charvak. So please understand that. So the rejection rests on impossibility of establishing Vyapti, that is universal committance. Inference presumes an invariable relation between Hetu and Sadhya. For example, wherever there is a smoke, there is a fire. This is a very classic example given in almost everywhere. Wherever inference has been discussed. And one more thing, in Indian philosophy particularly, the terms which belong to Sanskrit or Sanskrit terms or the original terms which has been used by those philosophers or those schools needs to be mentioned. So here also same thing has been done. According to Charvak, such universalities never directly perceived but only generalization from limited cases. Such future instances may contradict past regularities. Inference can never yield certainty. Smoke, for instance, may arise from damp fuel, dust, or mist, not necessarily from fire, because valid knowledge must be indubitable. Inference is excluded as an independent pramana. At most, they admitted practical inference in everyday affairs, but denied it any philosophical validity. So, see, so till here, this is the exposition, or this is the main answer. After writing, briefly, because in 150 words you will not have much scope, but very briefly you have to also give some critical points, some critical view, some comparative view, some important remarks about the whole exposition. So here also same thing has been done. Critically, Nyaya thinkers like Akshpat, Gautama and Udayan and Gangesa defended inference as indispensable for science, logic and metaphysics. Thus, while Charvaks highlight the fallibility of induction, their rejection of inference collapses under its impracticality. So this is a critical comment, or I mean, even though we have quoted Nyaya school, but a comment from our side also needs to be mentioned. So one line has been mentioned accordingly. Now we'll go to part B, a fifth question. Present an exposition of the debate between Nyayiks and Buddhists with reference to the notion of pramana and pramana phala. So, debate between Nyayiks and Buddhists with reference to notion of pramana and pramana phala. So, this is very, very specific kind of question. So, you cannot, and this is a comparative question. So, this has been now a new trend that they compare between different schools of Indian philosophy. Sometimes from Western philosophy and Indian philosophy, comparisons are asked, particularly if we see in paper 2, I mean, it has been done. So here, this is a comparative question, but very, very specific kind of comparative. It's not that broadly they are asking, very, very specific thing they are asking. So now accordingly, we'll answer. The debate between Nyayiks and Buddhists on pramana, that is valid means of knowledge, and pramana phala, that is fruit of knowledge, reflects their divergent epistemologies. For the Nyaya school, beginning with Akshpat Gautama and Nyaya Sutra, and developed by Vatsyayan, Udayan, and Ganges, a pramana or perception, inference, and comparison and testimony, these are four valid sources of pramana, is a distinct instrument producing prama. The phala is thus valid cognition, which further enables arth prapti, successful action. Thus, pramana and praman phala are causally distinct: instrument, cognition, practical success. Now, this is Nyaya's view. Now, let us see what is Buddhist view. Buddhist, especially Dignaga, in the Praman Samuchaya. Now, you see, in all these names have been written of philosophers, and their books and references have also been written. So this elevates the answer. So Dignaga in Pramana Samuchaya and Dharma Kirti in Pramana Vartika denied such separation. For them, cognition itself is pramana. Being self-luminous, swa samvedana, its phala is not another cognition, but artha kriya, pragmatic efficacy. To distinguish pramana from prama is they argued unnecessary duplication. So this is view of Buddhist. Thus, while Nyayiks insist on real distinction, Buddhists collapse them into one act. Nyaya critics accuse Buddhists of circularity, while Buddhists charge Nyaya with redundancy, a debate that became central to Indian epistemology. So now you see, in last paragraph, if you see, very briefly, some critical evaluative comments have been made. And previous paragraphs describes both the views which has been asked in the question. Now we'll go to part C. Delineate the main points of difference between theory of intrinsic validation, Swata Pramanyavad, and theory of extrinsic validation, Prata Pramanyavad, in classical Indian philosophy. So here the directive is main points of difference. That's what has to be written. In classical Indian philosophy, two rival theories address the validity of knowledge. Pramane, Swata Pramanyavad and Partha Pramanyavad. According to Mimamsa, especially Kumaril Bhatt of Bhatta school and Advaita Vedanta, knowledge is intrinsically valid. Every cognition carries its own truth at the moment of arising, unless later sublated by a contrary cognition. For instance, the perception this is a pot is valid as it arises, and falsity is known only if the error is detected later. Prabhakar Mimamsa added that a cognition simultaneously reveals itself, its object, and its validity. This view is Swata Pramanyavad. So basically, Mimamsa and Advaita Vedanta are exponents of this. By contrast, Nyaya Vaisesik school uphold Partha Pramanyavad. For them, knowledge is neutral at the outset. Its validity is determined externally through correspondence with the object or successful activity, pravritti samrathya. Thus, perception of a pot becomes valid only after confirmation that pot truly exists. Hence, the debate centers on whether validity is self-certifying or requires external verification, a key divergence in Indian epistemology. Now we'll go to part D. Examines Ramanuja's 7 objections against Mayavada Padvaita. So see, now here, I mean, this is anyway, question is from Vedanta, and Ramanuja and Advaita, both, Shankar Vedanta, both has been asked. But the issue is, it's very, very specific. Examine Ramanuja's 7 objections against Mayavad. So here, examine directive also means you have to critically, I mean, you have to evaluate that. So first thing, you have to mention what are the 7 objections of Mayavad of Advaita, and then subsequently you have to examine that. To what extent it's valuable, to what extent it's correct or not. So that's what has to be done. Accordingly, the answer is Ramanuja in Sri Bhasya, it is book, raises 7 objections to Shankar's Mayavad. First, if the word is mithya, the distinction between truth and illusion collapses. Second, illusion requires a substratum. If only Brahma exists, its purity is compromised. Third, avidya is incoherent if real dualism follows. If unreal, it cannot explain bondage. Fourth, an attributeless, that is Nirguna Brahma, cannot cause a variegated world. Fifth, liberation as a merger into Brahma negates individuality and invalidates bhakti. Sixth, Vedic text, for example, Chandogya Upanishad, describe Brahma with qualities contradicting Nirguna doctrine. Seventh, the Paramarthika Vyavaharika distinction undermines both word and scripture. This Paramarthika Vyavaharika was given by Shankaracharya. So now these are the 7 objections. Now we'll go to its examination. So critically, Advaitins like Sureswara and Padmapada reply that mithyatva means anirvachiniyata, that is indefinable, not sheer unreality. And Shankara treated avidya as beginningless but removable. Through Maya, Brahma manifests multiplicity, while the 2 levels of reality safeguard unity. So this is the view, I mean, basically reply of Shankara Advaitins to Ramanuja. Now, modern thinkers like Radhakrishnan defend Mayavad's transcendence, while Das Gupta highlights Ramanuja's realism. So there are both supporters and, I mean, supporters of both the views in modern philosophy also. So that also that mentioning this really elevates the answer. So that also we have done. Thus, the debate reflects Vedanta's enduring polarity between Advait's illusionism and Vishishtadvait's qualified realism. So this is the answer. Now we'll go to E part of 5th question. Present and exposition of Nyaya Vaisesik theory of causation. So this is a direct question, good question. I mean, easy question basically. So we'll go to that, but present an exposition. So Mainly its exposition. However, one or two sentences of comparative or critical view, if you can write, that will be good. But 90% you have to, or 80% you have to go with exposition only. The Nyaya Vaisesik, beginning with Akshpad Gautama, which book is Nyaya Sutra, and Kanada Vaisesik Sutra, uphold Asat Karyavad or Arambhavad. So this is their theory of causation, Asat Karyavad or Arambhavad, holding that the effect does not pre-exist in cause, but is newly produced. So this is their theory. A cause is that which is antecedent, unconditional, and invariably related to the effect. An effect is that which is capable of being produced by a cause and not perceived before production. So causes are of three kinds as per them. One is samvayi karana, asamvayi karana, nimitta karana. So inherent material cause, non-inherent cause, and efficient cause. Examples are also given. For example, threads of cloth, qualities inhering in threads, the weaver. The cause-effect relation is real, external, and non-eternal. With the destruction of cause, the effect ceases. Later Naics, like Udayan, elaborated this logic to defend realism. Now, this is the exposition, about 80% we have covered it. Now, very briefly, in last paragraph, we will try to give some other view also and then conclude. In contrast, Sankhya, following is Krishna's Sankarika, posits Satkaryavad. That is, effect pre-exists in cause. Nyaya Vaisesik reject this, affirming causation as a real production and grounding their pluralistic atomistic realism. So this is exposition of Nyaya Vaisesik theory of causation. Now we'll go to sixth question. Present a detailed account of Gautama's definition of perception. So this is again Nyaya Vaisesik question from Nyaya Vaisesik, which is a very, very important chapter as far as Indian philosophy is concerned. This is a 300 words, 20 marks question. So, I mean, good write-up can be done. But then again, this is a very specific question. Present a detailed account of Gautama's definition of perception. So only Gautama's definition of perception you have to write. You cannot simply write each and everything about their theory of knowledge or epistemology. Akshpad Gautama, the Nyaya Sutra, defines perception pratyaksh as the Sanskrit word has been taken, Abhyapadesyam, Abhyavichari, Vyavasayatmakam pratyaksham. That is knowledge produced by sense object contract. Indriyartha sannikarsha. So these are Sanskrit words taken from the Nyaya Vaisesik Nyaya Sutra, which is non-verbal, avipadesya, non-erroneous, avivyachari, and determinate. Vyavasayatmaka. So basically, these are, I mean, this is the explanation of this, what is given here. So knowledge produced by sense object contact, which is non-verbal, non-erroneous, and determinate. This is pratyaksh as far as Gautam's Nyaya Sutra is concerned. Perception arises through 6 types of contacts. First is Sanyog, second is Samvaya, third is inherence, fourth is conjunction with inherence, fifth is inherence in effect, and sixth is conjunction with what inheres in effect. So these categories discussed by Vatsyayana and Udyotkara explain how qualities and universals are apprehended. Then Gautama further distinguishes Nirvikal Pratyaksha, that is indeterminate perception, and Savikal Pratyaksha, or determinate perception. For example, this is a blue pot. Later thinkers like Udayan and Gangesa refine these distinction in works such as Tattva Chintamani. Nyaya also recognizes Yogaj Pratyaksh, an extraordinary perception claimed for yogis who directly intuit entities like Atma and Iswara. So this is Yogaj Pratyaksh. So till this point, we have given an exposition of perception as by Gautama and some other related Nyaya philosophers. Now we'll go to, I mean, briefly critically evaluate this whole thing. So critically, Dignaga and Dharmkriti restricted validity to Nirvikalp perception, dismissing Savikalp as conceptual construction. Shankar Sadvait saw perception as distorted by adhyasa, that is superimposition. Prabhakar Mimamsa held that cognition reveals itself, its object, and its validity simultaneously. Later Advaitins, Padampada also criticized Nyaya's externalism. Modern scholars again, so these are traditional Indian philosophers. Then modern philosophers also we can quote, because their criticism or their evaluation is more balanced and more you can say logical or scientific. So modern scholars such as Radhakrishnan and Dasgupta praise Nyaya's realism for safeguarding objectivity, while noting that it sidelines introspective and mystical modes of knowing. So on the one hand, there are some positive points. On the other hand, there are some negative points also which has been pointed by modern philosophers. This can be mentioned here. Thus, Gautama's definition made perception the primary pramana of Nyaya Vaisesik and sparked long-standing debates between Buddhist, Vedantins, and Mimamsaks, shaping Indian epistemology's discourse on realism, conceptual mediation, and error. So this is a concluding remarks as far as 300-word question, 20 marks question is concerned. Roughly, it sums up what we have discussed earlier. Now we'll go to part B. This is 15 marks question, 225 words. We will try to give the answer. How is Brahma conceptualized in Advaita philosophy as both Nimitt and Upadan Karana of the world? Discuss with suitable examples. Again, this is a very direct kind of question from Advaita Vedanta. So we'll go to answer directly. In Shankar's Advaita Vedanta, Brahma is both Nimitta Karan and Upadan Karan of the world, unlike Nyaya Vaisesik, which distinguishes potter from clay. Advaita unites both roles in Brahma, affirming non-duality. As Nimitta, Brahma is the intelligent ground from which the universe arises, is sustained and dissolves. So this is Nimitta. As Upadan, Brahma is also the substance, just as clay underlies pots or gold ornaments. The Taittiriya and Chandogya Upanishads, these are two Upanishads, affirm Brahma as the source and end of all beings. Causality is explained through Vivartavad, that is apparent transformation. Brahma itself remains immutable. Multiplicity arises through Maya. The rope snake analogy illustrates the rope remains unchanged, though it appears as a snake. Gaudapada's Ajativad in Manduk Upanishad, Manduk Karika, this is book, anticipates this doctrine. Sureshwara, Padampada, and Vachaspati Mishra elaborated its nuances. These are again, they are Advaitins, basically philosophers, subsequent philosophers. Now we'll go briefly to critically evaluate this. Critically, Ramanuja is one of the severe critics of Shankaracharya. Ramanuja insisted on Parinamavad. Shankaracharya is Vivartavad. Now Ramanuja is Parinamavad. That is real transformation. Madhava stresses real difference. And Nyaya denied uniting efficient and material causes. Advaita defends its position with Anirvachaniyata, Maya, and two levels of truth, Vyavaharik and Paramarthik. So these are the defenses of Advaita Vedanta. Modern thinkers like Radhakrishnan saw it as a reconciling transcendence with immanence, while Dasgupta warned it risks undetermining empirical realism. Thus, Advaita redefines creation as a mere appearance, preserving Brahma's changelessness while explaining cosmic manifestations through non-dual causality. I will go to sixth question. This is again a 15 marks question, 225 words will try to explain. Discuss the debate between Bhatta and Prabhakar Mimamsaks with reference to nature of non-existence, that is abhava, and its knowledge. So, nature of abhava and knowledge of abhava. And what are the views of two sub schools of Mimamsa school? So this is what has to be discussed. Discuss means again you have to basically evaluate also. I mean critically comment also after giving some exposition. Within the Mimamsa, a classical debate arose between Bhatt school of Kumaril Bhatt and Prabhakar school of Prabhakar Mishra over the nature of non-existence and its cognition. So this is what has been asked. The Bhattas accept Abhava as a distinct Padartha and posit Anuplabdhi as a separate Pramana. So this is Bhatt school. For Kumaril, the absence of a part on the ground is directly cognized, irreducible to perception or inference. He classified 4 types of absence. Prag Bhava, so these are from Bhatt school. Prag Bhava, then another is Padvans Bhava, then Atyant Bhava, then Anyanya Bhava. This realist ontology influenced Jayant Bhatta, Udayan and Ganges, and paralleled the Nyaya acceptance of Abhava as a genuine category. So this is Bhatt school. Now Prabhakar schools, represented by Salikant Mishra, rejected both Abhava as an independent reality and Anuplabdhi as a distinct Pramana. So they have rejected both. For them, absence is grasped through perception of the locus or through inference. Hence, Abhava is not ontologically real, but a relational cognition. So this is the view of Prabhakar Mimamsa. Now we'll try to critically find out who is correct, who is wrong, and what are the pros and cons of both views. Critically, the Bhatta view secures immediacy but risks multiplying pramanas, while Prabhakara's view is economical yet may underplay the certainty of negation. S. Radhakrishnan praised Bhatta realism for securing absence as a real, but Surendranath Dasgupta noted the logical economy of Prabhakara approach. Thus, the debate reflects 2 strategies: realism, affirming absence as a real, versus relationalism, treating it as dependent on positive cognition. So these are the 2 views: relationalism and realism. Now we'll go to question 7th. Why does Sankara consider Sankhya philosophy as his chief opponent, Pradhan Malla? Examine his arguments against Sankhya philosophy. So in this paper, if you might have observed, Vedanta, I mean, a number of questions have come from Vedanta. So, I mean, in my opinion, roughly 40 to 50 marks questions are from Vedanta. But the questions are not direct, or questions are not descriptive. Questions are very, very specific, asking for some very specific information, and you cannot just write anything and escape. If you know that, then you have to write. So here also you see, why does Sankara consider Sankhya philosophy as his chief opponent? Examine the arguments against Sankhya philosophy. Examine the Shankara's argument against Sankhya philosophy. These are 20 marks question, big question, 300 words. Now let us try to understand how we can write a good answer for this. In his Brahma Sutra Bhasya, Shankara treats Sankhya as his Pradhan Malla, chief opponent. Unlike Charvaks or Buddhists who reject Vedas, Sankhya accepts Vedas, karma, rebirth, and moksha. So all these are accepted by Sankhya philosophy, making it close to Vedanta, yet radically different. It's a dualism of Purusa and Prakriti opposed Advaita's teaching of one supreme Brahma as both intelligent and material cause. Because of its systematic realism and wide influence, so this is the main reason, because of its systematic influence, realism, and wide influence, Sankara considered it the strongest rival. Scholars like Radhakrishnan, Dasgupta, and Hirayana confirm this status. That because of this reason, Shankaracharya considered Sankhya as prime opponent of Advaita Vedanta. Now, what are his refutations? Now, let us see. Shankara's refutation proceeds on several grounds. First is inert Prakriti. So here sometimes, if you have very good clarity, you can write number wise or bullet points wise also, because you have to enumerate the grounds here. So accordingly, numbering has been done, and headings also have been used accordingly. Because so first is inert Prakriti. An unconscious pradhana cannot positively evolve into a teleological cosmos. The Taittiriya Upanishad identifies Brahma, pure intelligence, as the cause. So this is the first objection. Second, scriptural testimony. Shruti teaches Brahma as abhinna nimitta upadan karana. Sankhya split efficient and material causality is unscriptural. Third is multiplicity of selves. Sankhya's many purusas contradict the Upanishadic Tattvam Asi, which presupposes identity of self and Brahma. Fourth is liberation. Sankhya Karika, that is Ishwar Krishna's book, describes Kaivalya as separation of Purusha and Prakriti. Shankaracharya insists true moksha is not dual realization through removal of avidya. Then fifth is causality. Though accepting Satkaryavad, Shankara redefines it as a Vivartvad, that is apparent transformation, preserving Brahm's immutability via Maya. Padampad and Sureswara reinforces this critique. Now, these are the main criticism of Shankaracharya against Sankhya. Now, we have to critically evaluate this criticism also. So, accordingly, now you see, critically, Sankhya's guna theory and rationalism were admired, but its dualism undermined Upanishadic non-duality. Modern scholars noted that Advait's constant engagement with Sankhya sharpened its categories of causality, self, and liberation. Thus, Sankhya was Shankara's chief opponent because it was philosophically rigorous, scripturally engaged, yet diametrically opposed. Its refutation was essential was essential for establishing Advaita's vision of absolute non-duality over dualistic realism. So this completes the answer. Now we'll go to 7th B. Explain the nature of God and its role in Kaivalya and yoga philosophy. So this is again a very direct question, but very specific question. Explain the nature of God and its role. So nature of God and its role, two things has to be explained. Role in Kaivalya, in yoga philosophy. This is 15 marks to 25 words question. In Patanjali's yoga philosophy, God is defined as a Purus Vishesa. As you know, Sankhya Yoga are combined, but only difference is that in Patanjali Yoga, God is also there. So he is a special self or Purus Vishesa. Klesa, Karma, Vipaka, Asyaira, Aparmarstha. This is Yoga Sutra 1.24. Untouched by, which means untouched by afflictions, action, fruition, or latent impression. So this is the God in yoga philosophy. Unlike Kapila's Sankhya, which is non-theistic, yoga incorporates theism into its dualistic metaphysics. The Yoga Sutra and Vyas Bhasya describe Ishvara as the eternal teacher. Purvesam Api Guru, eternal teacher. His symbol is Om, and mediation on it steadies the mind and removes obstacles. Devotion to God, that is Ishwar Pranidhana, is listed among the niyamas and serves as an effective aid to samadhi. With respect to Kaivalya, liberation remains the isolation of Purusha from Prakriti. So, till now, we have described the nature. Now, its role in Kaivalya needs to be described, because there are two parts in the question. So, accordingly, first part is its nature, second part is its role. So, with respect to Kaivalya, liberation remains the isolation of Purusha from Prakriti through discriminative knowledge, that is Vivek Khyati. Ishvara does not directly bestow moksha, but his grace purifies the mind and accelerates concentration. So, this is his role, basically, if you see. Vachaspati Mishra in Tattva Vaisardi and Bhoja Raja in Raj Martanda highlight this supportive role. So this is supportive role of God, basically. He is not directly causing the liberation, but Kaivalya, but he is just having a supportive role. Critically, some hold that yoga's God is a pragmatic aid rather than metaphysical necessity, since Kaivalya can in principle be attained by self-effort. Yet, Vyasa emphasized that devotion to Iswara offers the most direct path for aspirants. Modern scholars like Radhakrishnan view this conception as a reconciling rational Sankhya with devotion, while Das Gupta notes it balances metaphysics with theism. So this is what is a critical view on this. Thus, unlike Vedanta's Sagun Brahma, Yoga's Iswara is a guide and catalyst, facilitating but not granting liberation, making him central to practice, though not to ontology. So this is the sum and substance of what has been written in previous paragraphs. Now we'll go to question 7C. Is Jaina philosophy pluralistic and realistic? Critically discussed. So now this is directive is critically discussed. So roughly about 40% we have to devote to critical evaluation, and 60% we have to go for exposition. And this is 225 words question, 15 marks question. Question is direct question. Is Jaina philosophy pluralistic and realistic? So you have to limit our views on Jaina philosophy to this only. Jaina philosophy is both pluralistic and realistic. Its pluralism is expressed in Anekantavad, which asserts that reality has infinite attributes, Anant Dharmas. This is operationalized through Syadvad and Saptabhangi, sevenfold predication. For instance, a pot exists from one standpoint, does not exist from other, and may be indescribable in at another. Thus, no single judgment exhausts reality. Ontologically, Jainism is realist. So this is pluralism, and now realism we are going to describe. So Jainism is realist, affirming the eternal existence of six dravyas, that is jiva, and 5 kinds of ajiva, that is matter, space, time, and motion and rest. Souls are infinite, conscious, and distinct. Unlike Advait's single Brahm or Buddhist Anatta, bondage results here in Jaina, bondage results from karmic particles adhering to the soul, and liberation comes when these are destroyed. Classical thinkers like Umaswati, in his book is Tattvarth Sutra, then Kunda Kunda, Hemchandra, and Haribhadra Suri systematized this pluralistic realism. So this is realism, and earlier it was pluralism, and now we'll critically examine this whole doctrine. Critically, Advaita Vedanta dismisses pluralism as undermining non-duality. Buddhism, for example, Dharmakirti, Buddhist philosopher, rejects permanent substances. Naiyics doubt whether conditional judgments yield determinate knowledge. The Jain doctrine of karmic Pudgala is also challenged as metaphysically obscure. Yet modern scholars like Radhakrishnan and Das Gupta admire Jainism for fostering tolerance and intellectual humility. And this is very one of the very specific positive qualities of Jainism, we all know. Thus, Jainism is pluralistic and epistemology and realist in ontology, offering a distinctive middle path between Vedantic absolutism and Buddhist nihilism. Though its conditionalism raises questions of logical finality. So this is a negative point also has been mentioned. So in the conclusion, if you see positive, and I mean it's a balanced kind of conclusion. So besides positive points, negative briefly also has been mentioned, negative point. Now we'll go to question 8. This is again 300 words question, 20 marks question. Discuss the idea of Bimba Pratibimbavad as presented in Vedanta philosophy. Again, this now Vedanta has been come. So more than 50-60 marks questions are from Vedanta philosophy. Discuss the idea of Bimba Pratibimbavad as presented in Vedanta philosophy along with its soteriological significance. So first thing you have to discuss as per directive Bimba Pratibimbavad as in Vedanta, and then its soteriological significance. And since the directive is discussed, so some critical comments, critical evaluation also has to be mentioned. Okay, so we'll now start. In Advaita Vedanta, the doctrine of Bimba Pratibindavad, that is original reflection theory, was introduced by Padampada in Panchapadika and elaborated by Prakashtaman in Vivarana. Again, it is book. It seeks to clarify the relation between Brahma, that is Bimb, the original, and the Jiva, that is Pratibimb, the reflected self. According to this theory, the one infinite Brahma appears as many finite selves through reflection in the mind, that is Antahkara. Just as one sun is reflected in countless water pots without undergoing change, so Brahma appears as innumerable jivas, their plurality caused by adjuncts. The original remains unaffected, aligning with Upanishadic dictum Tattvamasi. Thinkers like Sarva Gyatman and Chitsuka systematized this doctrine later on. So this is now the explanation of Bim Pratibindvad. Now, soteriologically, what is its significance? Now, let us try to understand that. Soteriologically, it explains bandha and moksha. Bondage arises when jiva identifies with the reflected image distorted by avidya. Liberation occurs when Atma Gyan reveals that jiva is not a pratibimb, but identical with bimb only. Hence, moksha is not a new attainment, but realization of eternal non-duality. Thus, this aligns with Gaudapada's Ajativad, which denied real origination, seeing multiplicity as a mere appearance. Now, we'll try to critically evaluate this doctrine of Bim Pratibimvad and its use in soteriology. Critically, Ramanuja rejected reflection as unreal, positing the Sarira Sariri Bhav relation, soul as a mode of Brahma, while Madhava upheld eternal Veda within Advaita. Sureswara and Vachaspati Mishra offered alternatives, avoiding the dualism implied in reflection. Modern philosophers like Radhakrishnan praised the metaphor as reconciling unity while polarity, while Das Gupta warned it risks implying two realities. Hiriana interpreted it as epistemological, preserving Advaita's non-dualism. Now we'll go to conclusion. Thus, Bim Pratibimvad reconciles experiential multiplicity with Advaita's non-dual metaphysics. Unlike Ramanuja's realism or Madhava's dualism, it secures liberation as recognition of Jiva's eternal identity with Brahma. Now we'll go to question 8p. Both ascetic and materialist are partial in their negation of each other. Explain Sri Aurobindo's integral philosophy in the light of above statement. So now this question from Sri Aurobindo, 15 marks question, 225 words, and Aurobindo's philosophy has to be explained in light of above sentence, that is both ascetic and materialist are partial in their negation of each other. Now let us see. Sri Aurobindo's integral philosophy critiques both asceticism and materialism. The ascetic, exemplified by Sankara's Advaita, negates the word as Maya, while the materialist seen in Charvaka or modern mechanistic thought affirms only matter, denying spirit. For Aurobindo's, both are partial truths, incomplete in isolation. In Life Divine and Synthesis of Yoga, these are two books, he articulates an integral Advaita. This is a philosophy of Aurobindo. Reality is one, but manifests as spirit and matter. Matter is spirit evolved, spirit is matter evolved. Matter is spirit involved. So this is Aurobindo's theory. Matter is spirit involved and spirit is matter evolved. Unlike Shankara, he affirms the world as a real, the arena for divine manifestation, drawing also on Western evolution through Darwin's biological evolution and Hegel's dialectic. So these have been used by Aurobindo. Aurobindo reinterprets Vedanta in progressive dynamic terms. Through integral yoga, the individual unites transcendence with transformation of life. Aurobindo's triple transformation. So again, this is another theory of Aurobindo, triple transformation, that is psychic awakening, spiritual realization, and supramental descent, culminates in supermind. Reconciling finite and infinite. Liberation or moksha thus becomes not withdrawal but the divination of life. Now let us critically evaluate this Aurobindo's philosophy very briefly. Critically, Advaitins may see his emphasis on matter as diluting non-duality, while materialists dismiss the supramental ideal as speculative or utopian. Yet scholars like Radhakrishnan and Dasgupta admire his synthesis of Vedanta with evolution, while Hiriana saw in him a creative reconciliation of East-West categories. Thus, unlike Sankara's word negation or Charvak's word affirmation, Aurobindo's envisions word transformation as the highest fulfillment. So this is what Aurobindo's philosophy in light of this sentence. Now we'll go to 8th C, which is the last question of this section. Is Buddhist notion of nirvana in consonance with their perception of Kshanikvad and Naratmavad? Critically discuss. So critically discuss again, 40% will go for critical evaluation and 60% will be exposition. And the question, I will read it again. Is Buddhist notion of nirvana in consonance with their conception of Kshanikvad and Naratmavad? Buddhist notion of nirvana is broadly consistent. So now please note down this word, it's very important. Broadly consistent with doctrines of Kshanikvad and Naratmavad, since both provide the metaphysical foundation of liberation. Though, so this is again very important, though tensions remain, particularly regarding its permanence and identity of the liberated subject. According to Abhidharma Buddhism, especially Vasubandhu, in Abhidharma Kosha, all conditioned entities are momentary. This Kshanikvad explains bondage as a causal succession of desires and ignorance. Nirvana is achieved with this series when this series ceases. Likewise, the doctrine of Naratmavad, emphasized in Anattalakhana Sutta and by Nagarjuna, denies a permanent self, interpreting the person as a flux of 5 skandhas. Thus, nirvana is not union with an atma, but cessation of illusion of selfhood and the cycle of rebirth. So this is the conception of Buddhist nirvana. Buddhism describes nirvana as an asmaskrita dharma, unconditioned reality, beyond the impermanence that governs conditioned dharmas. Yet, this invites critique. So, there are a number of critics. So, briefly, we will now mention criticism also. If all is momentary, how can nirvana be permanent? Madhyamik thinkers like Nagarjuna answers by identifying it with sunyata, beyond being and non-being. Nyaya critics such as Udyotkara object that liberation without a real self is incoherent. Within Buddhism also, Yogacharya, that is Asanga, one philosopher, posited alaya vijnana to explain continuity. Modern scholars like Radhakrishnan admire its psychological insight, while Dasgupta warns that treating nirvana as unconditioned challenges pure momentariness. Thus, nirvana accords with Kshanikvad and Naratmavad, but unlike Advaita's eternal self or Nyaya's permanent Atma, it rests on impermanence and no soul, raising enduring philosophical tension. So, even though broadly it confirms, but a number of philosophical questions and tension it raises. So, this basically completes the section B of paper 1 of 2025 philosophy optional in UPSC. What we will do is in next classes, we'll try to take up paper 2. I think in next 2 classes, we will be able to complete paper 2 also, and then subsequently we'll take other topics of philosophy. Many topics have already covered, particularly paper 1. Most of the topics I have covered, and the class videos are also available on YouTube. You can see or notes, PDF notes, and you can join the WhatsApp group and Telegram groups are there. The description in description of this video also you can find those links. I hope that this video is going to be useful, particularly for those students who are preparing for next year's exam. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you, one and all.